Okay, I hope we're on the air. Grand Canyon hikers keep vanishing. Looks like we are on the air. I'm hoping so. My name is Bill. Welcome to the Night Terrors Weekend Show. Would appreciate any reports that we are on the air. My Banned by YouTube series drops a video every Wednesday morning. YouTube said to me, take down 3 years of your videos. YouTube is live. Oh, thank you, Elder. These videos are no longer on the channel. The only way you can see them is to catch them on Wednesday. If you value what I do here on the Night Terror streams and the Night Terrors videos, one way to support the channel is through Patreon. Become a patron of the show by clicking on the Patreon link in the description below. Thank you for supporting the show. Looks like everything's good. Twitch is now live. Thank you, Elder, as well. Thank you, Elder, for a second time. And the Mennonites Make Great Things is here. Mennonite says, hiya. Welcome to Mennonites. JC says, Bill, what's up, my brother? What's up, JC? JC, one of the old school. Thank you, Gotcha Man, for subscribing. By the way, folks, you can subscribe through Prime to this channel for free. You get one subscription on Prime to a Twitch account. So please make it Night Terrors. Rhino Rex is here. Brooke Birch is here. Welcome, Brooke. And Rhino coming with a topic. Thank you, Rhino. That's the wrong page. I'm going to have to copy that. Doing some shopping earlier. Copy that. And put it on the real page. Thank you to Rhino Rex. David Bryce Jr. says hello. Welcome, Tina Tanashevsky. Tina is one of the original gangsters of Night Terrors. Here's an article at grunge.com entitled People Who Mysteriously Vanished in the Grand Canyon. Grunge has some damn good articles. Excuse my language. Excuse my French. Verpine has arrived. Welcome, Verpine. Any suggestions, V? It's written by D.B. Kelly. D.B. Kelly begins. Zerithian has arrived. Welcome, Zerithian. America is a place of breathtakingly beautiful natural wonders. And nowhere is this more evident than the Grand Canyon. It's almost mind-numbing how big it is. Garbled User says, yo. Looks like we have a suggestion from Mennonites. Thank you, Mennonites. It's estimated 5.9 million people visit each year. And sometimes bad things happen. Welcome, Garbled User. If I didn't say that already. Occasionally, people just disappear. For instance, on August the 30th, 1869, John Wesley Powell and his expedition did something awesome. Thank you, Green Tea. That's a good one. They finished their run down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. There hadn't been many who thought they could do it. And along the way, they were reported dead an impressive 3 times. Sadly, not everyone made it home. Among Powell's team were a pair of half-brothers from Vermont, Seneca and Oramel Howland. On day 96 of the grueling trip, Oramel tried to convince Powell to give up. Otherwise, they, along with another expedition member named Bill Dunn, welcome Audacity, were hiking out of the canyon on their own. Powell debated but ultimately refused, and the three men walked into the wilderness and were never seen again. Powell later tried to find out what happened to the three men, and it wasn't long before he heard rumors they'd been killed by a group of Shivwit Indians. The next year, that was seemingly confirmed by a Mormon interpreter who translated for Powell. The Shivwit had mistaken them for prospectors. Prospectors who had attacked one of their own, and they were unalived in retaliation. But that might not be the whole story. Historians now suspect that the interpreter was lying. How they knew that, we'll never know. And that the men had actually been unalived by a group of Mormons who thought they were lawmen, coming after them in the wake of the Mormon massacre of 120 members of a California-bound wagon train, or perhaps a pushcart train, if you know the Mormon history. In 1993, Robert and Donna Spangler headed to the Grand Canyon, and while they were there, Donna fell. Robert later said he had looked away to adjust his camera, and when he looked back, she had disappeared over the edge. Her body was recovered from 200 feet over the rim. And that was that, seemingly. The Los Angeles Times says not everyone believed it was an accident, including Donna's relatives. They said she was terrified of heights. Thank you, Verpine. Another excellent suggestion, and it's a link. Wow, I'm really rolling in it today. Great stuff, Verpine. Thank you. Let's pop that in right there. Thank you, V. And whatever happened there, it had not been voluntary. Now fast forward to the year 2000 and Robert's diagnosis of brain and lung cancer metastasized. Thinking he might be willing to talk, law enforcement paid him another visit. Robert Spangler confessed. Yes, he pushed her. And confessed even more than that. He also admitted that he executed his first wife just a few days before Christmas in 1978. And just before unaliving their 15-year-old daughter and 17-year-old son. Why? He wanted to be with his new girlfriend. Those deaths were ruled a murder-homicide. And his marriage to the girlfriend in question ended in divorce. I guess she's the lucky one in this story. He married Donna after that, and admitted that he had pushed her because he was unhappy. Green Tea says a confessed serial killer. Thank you, Tina. The Los Angeles Times has already told you, and so have I. In 2001, the AP reported that Robert Spangler had been sentenced to life in prison. And his cancer diagnosis was terminal. He got off too lucky, if you ask me. Floyd Roberts III went for a hike in the Grand Canyon on June 17, 2016. With him were his friend Ned Bryant and Ned's daughter Madeline. According to Strange Outdoors, they were the last people to see Roberts, and what happened was definitely strange, writes the author. Roberts was a one-time NASA employee, a computer programming teacher, and an experienced hiker who had been to the Grand Canyon before. So when they reached a hill during the course of their planned 9-day hike, no one gave it a second thought when they split up. Not a good idea. The Bryants went over the hill and Roberts went around, with the idea they'd meet on the other side. Roberts never made it. and when the Bryants backtracked, they could find no sign of him. Animal attack? After camping for the night, they hiked to an area where they had cell phone reception. After camping for the night? Okay, close friends. Brookbridge says, this is like all the true crime videos I watch. There's more a-coming. They hiked to an area where they had cell phone reception and called in a missing person alert. It kicked off a 6-day search involving 7 ground teams, dogs, National Park Service helicopters. They covered an area of 10 square miles, and the only trace they found were footprints. But they could not confirm they belonged to Roberts. He has yet to be found. Not all the mysterious disappearances have an unhappy ending. Occasionally the news is good. Martin Edward O'Connor spent the last days of 2019 at the Yavapai Lodge. Eldergrown says, what is it with experienced hikers? According to the Post, he was last seen there on December 22nd. Not long after, he was reported missing. He was traveling alone, and anyone who saw him was told to get in touch with the National Park Service. Those sorts of stories tend not to end well, especially in midwinter. Conditions were difficult, and it had started to snow during the days he was missing. Miraculously, the Park Service got a tip that some hikers had spotted him on the New Hants Trail, one of the least maintained and most difficult trails in the canyon. The tip came in late on Wednesday, and when a chopper was sent out on Thursday, he was found. With limited resources, said park officials, but alive and well. The rescue team said they were amazed at how well he was doing. Lounging, sitting back in his Barcalounger. Now that's my addition there. And what exactly happened in the 11 days he was missing remains unknown. Why is that? Did they not ask him questions? The idea, says the Los Angeles Times, was that... another news story. Okay. Missing in the Grand Canyon. I should be reading the titles. Missing in the Grand Canyon, or was there more to it? Foreshadowing, there was more to it. The idea was that the newlyweds, Glenn and Bessie Hyde, and this is a classic, we've covered this before, were going to go on a grand adventure down the Grand Canyon and then earn their living, not as bean farmers, but on the lecture circuit. Because this was in 1928, the Roaring Twenties, and they wanted to tour they wanted to tour the country, talking about their record-breaking trip. They stopped at Grand Canyon Village to restock their supplies. Having set off on October the 20th, and they were last seen on November 18th. Their boat was found a few weeks later, still afloat, still loaded with supplies. Those who had seen them previously said that Bessie seemed hesitant. She clearly didn't want to be on the trip. The dynamics of the relationship are pure speculation, according to this article. But here's where the story takes a turn. Glenn and Bessie were declared missing in 28, and years later, another party was taking a trip down the same route when they came across a woman traveling alone. They asked her to join them, and she did. The Grand Canyon Visitor Center says that it was one night over a campfire that their guide started telling the story of Glenn and Bessie. And that's when she said that she was Bessie. She claimed she unalived Glenn during a fight and left to start a new life under the name of Georgie Clark. If that was all there was to it, it would be questionable. In fact, I've seen articles that say So it was a dead end. It was a red herring. It was just someone trying to make themselves look good or bad. And then you get to this last part of this article. But after Clark's death, Georgie Clark, that is, a search of her belongings turned up a birth certificate that identified her maiden name as Bessie DeRoss and a marriage certificate for Glenn and Bessie Hyde. Tina T says, well, that murdering hussy. Next up, a suggestion. Our first suggestion is from T Plateau. To wit. And I didn't copy it over. I must have copied it, erased it or something. That's not good. I normally save it immediately. I must have copied. No, here it is. Oh, here it is. Is it? This might be it. No, I don't think so. I'm going to have to scroll up chat here to get T Plateau's suggestion. I mean, this is only the second time she's told me. Let me scroll up here real quick. Could be at the very top. Okay, here it is. If I can get it quick. If chat doesn't move, I got it. All right. And at 18 minutes past the hour. Let's search here. The unaliving of Jessie Hupper Mozee. Let's say Jessie Hupper Mozee on the SSC&B. Thank you, T Plateau. Arthur Cohn says, this might be it. Bill 2025. Ooh, this looks good at cruiselinehistory.com. Let's see how our luck holds out. The first result. In an article posted by Michael Grace and evidently written by Michael Grace, entitled Death at Sea. This is Benjamin Mozee, missing passenger on a cruise ship. The SSC&B, July 29th, 1940. Excellent length, too. Good choice. Mrs. Frank R. Elliott, the sister-in-law of Benjamin Mozee. Am I going to say Mozee or Mozee? Mozee. Spelled Mozee. Got to be Mozee. Said she saw Mrs. Mozee saw her off when she boarded the steamship on a Great Lakes cruise. She believes that Mrs. Mozee was robbed, unalived, and dumped overboard. The facts support the theory. Elliott says that when Mozee embarked on the Lake Erie cruise from Cleveland, Ohio to Buffalo, New York, she had a large amount of cash with her and expensive jewelry, including 3 diamond rings. Why on earth was she carrying all that jewelry? For a 3-hour tour. Cleveland police say the diamond rings were not found in Mrs. Mozee's cabin, nor on her body when her body was recovered on July the 31st, having washed up at Geneva on the lake. The cash she brought with her on the cruise was also missing. Mrs. Mozee's body was found 2 days after she was last seen alive. She had 2 black eyes, as if she'd been beaten. Coroner Charles Webster, who examined Mozee's body, said that he doubted the bruises around her eyes were post-mortem or from hitting the water, due to the fact that when her body was found, the ship had not reported Mrs. Mozee's disappearance. Well, on a cruise ship, how how discerning is the body count. I've taken tours on Lake George where there is none whatsoever, ever. And they have like 2 or 3 cruise ships there. The unidentified body was buried without an autopsy in Ashtabula, Ohio. Mr. Mozee, arriving to identify his wife's body after it was exhumed, was clearly shocked to learn that the ship did not miss his wife, nor report her missing until 15 days after she disappeared. O.R. Willard, the passenger agent for the cruise line, said the reason the woman was not reported missing for 2 weeks was because her clothes were laid out on the bed every day the maid came, making it appear the cabin was still in use. How long was this cruise across a lake? What? This of course, does not explain why the maid did not notice that the bed was already made up each day when she arrived. Yeah, that's got to be you think the maid would think trouble there. I think that's just Willard's excuse. Welcome back, T Plateau. We're covering your topic at this time. Elder says Great Lakes represent. A very suspicious fact was the finding that Mozee's palms of her hands were covered in grease. This led to speculation that Mozee had been in a crew area of the ship just before or after her death. Her death was ruled a homicide, and federal agents took over the investigation. There's no record of any arrest or trial or conviction for the unaliving. Mr. Mozee's husband was Marshal Benjamin Mozee, the former superintendent of schools in Alaska. Wow. Mrs. Mozee was a former nurse. The SS C&B was the largest and most costly inland steamer on the Great Lakes, launched in 1912. C&B was an all-steel ship with a passenger capacity of 1,500, and it had 4 decks. In 1942, the C&B was acquired by the U.S. Navy and converted into the USS Wolverine. The Wolverine served as an aircraft carrier training ship in Lake Michigan during World War II, and shortly thereafter was scrapped. And let's see, it is now 25 minutes past the hour. Time for our next suggestion. And that is from Eldergrown. Let me just toss this over here. And I'm going to be forgetting the next 3 suggestions. The source of the next 3 suggestions. Or the next 2. Maybe the next 1. So my apologies beforehand. I think I can remember. This is Rhino Rex. And this is Verpine. And this is Elder. But this one too is Elder. And it's from thelittlehouseofhorrors.com. And it's entitled Dulce Base, America's Scariest UFO Mystery. It's written by uncredited. Look at the bottom. And nothing. Written by Anonymous. And that I have. Yeah, I have that too. Yeah, I better bring these over here. Thank you, Green Tea, for reminding me. I think those others I can get rid of, but I'm not sure. I'm going to plop these down here. And T Plateaus. There's T Plateaus. So at 26 minutes past the hour. Now 27 minutes past the hour. We're going to wait while I count the time. Anonymous begins. From a few unconfirmed tales, the story has grown into one of the most scariest conspiracy theories of our time. It has stories of genetic trials, revealed technology, cut-up cattle, and first-hand reports. Dulce-based, is it Dulce or Dulce? I think it's Dulce. Dulce base won't go away, whether it's a myth or a real place. Excuse me. And for those fascinated by such mysteries, there are modern ways to dive into the theme. And it looks like there's a little advertisement here, which I'm going to skip. Here's my water system. I don't know how well you can see that. Freeze a cube in the bottle. And then you take a bottle of cold water out of the refrigerator. And you apply it to the first bottle. And why did I put the cap back on? Let's keep it up here. Where's Sandy? And coffee. It's the Silk brand. I'm not sure what who the maker is, but the brand is not the brand, but the model is Silk. Pretty good stuff. I like that Silk brand. There were first rumors about Dulce base in the 1970s. Gabe Valdez, a police officer in New Mexico, was one of the first people to sound the warning. He looked into dozens of dead sheep that were found near Dulce. Even experienced detectives were shocked by what they saw. The animals had not been killed by other animals. Their bodies were carefully cut open and certain parts were removed. All of the blood had been drained. Other unusual items left around were light sticks, gas masks, according to Valdez. At about the same time, scientist Paul Benowitz said he picked up a strange electrical signal close to the mound. He was sure they came from a station underground that the U.S. government and aliens shared. Benowitz's ideas quickly caught on with the public and the people who study UFOs. His claim started a movement that is still going strong, even though they were later thrown out as part of a government effort to spread false information. Yeah, they did a lot to discredit this guy. The government went to great lengths to discredit Paul Benowitz. Skeptics argued there was no way to build a complex the size and scale described by locals. So you have locals talking too. This changed when researcher John Greenwald found declassified records explaining the subterrane. In the 1970s, Los Alamos National Lab, 100 miles near Dulce, Looks like this might have been translated by Google. 100 miles from Dulce, developed a nuclear-powered subterranean tunneling system. It melted rock. It produced smooth, glass-lined tunnels. Unlike drilling. The existence of this machine showed it was at least possible to hollow out sections of a mountain without the typical signs of construction. No documents tied the subterranean directly to Dulce. But for believers, this is enough. The government had both the technology and the secrecy to make it real. The most dramatic account of Dulce Base came from Phil Schneider. He said government geologist and engineer... He said? No. He worked as a government geologist and engineer, working on subsurface projects, subterranean projects. At UFO conferences, he has told audiences about a deadly firefight deep inside Archuleta Mesa. According to Schneider, which is near Dulce or at Dulce, this mesa, his team accidentally broke into an alien-controlled section of the base. A violent battle followed. He stated 66 troops and contractors died in the conflict. He himself lost fingers in the firefight. Schneider described Dulce Base as having 7 levels. Each floor, he claimed, had its own purpose. Genetic experiments, alien housing, psychic research, mind control. He said also the government was building hundreds of similar bases across the country and connecting them with the subterranean, no doubt. Schneider died under mysterious circumstances in 1996. Fueling curiosity. His constancy, injuries, and dramatic assertions preserve his narrative. The mystery goes beyond hearsay. Dulce residents often encounter UFOs, odd lights above the mesa. They report massive spaceships hanging quietly before disappearing. One resident, Geraldine Julian, told reporters she believed every story because she had seen things herself. She even claimed to have witnessed a hybrid experiment. A creature with the torso of a man, but the lower body of a goat. Dory Vigil, another resident, photographed a UFO near the mesa. He insisted he would take a lie detector test to prove it. Other residents say they've watched the ground itself open, releasing steam, as if concealing machinery. Machinery which was hidden beneath. Over the years, a picture of Dulce Base has taken shape through testimony, speculation, and conspiracy forums. The details vary, but the core claims remain the same. There's a considerable Indian population around Dulce as well. Even those who dismiss the UFO sightings, or I should say Native American, my apologies, or First Peoples, right? They can't ignore the cattle mutilation. Ranchers continue to find animals drained of blood and cut open with surgical precision. Their tongue, eyes, reproductive organs are often missing. For many, this is evidence of experiments. The thought of aliens taking biological material for hybrid experiments is alarming, but coincides with Dulce reports. Skeptics blame predators or pranksters for the mutilations. Not when it's the same kind of thing that's happening in a bunch of different places as well. Because you have different kinds of predators in different states. Different kinds of pranksters. So no. It's not predators, it's not pranksters. Despite decades of research, no explanation has emerged. Rhino Rex wishes to know, man, why are aliens so interested in our reproductive bits? Brooke Birch says, because they don't have reproductive bits. Some people call Dulce the Dulce, some people call Dulce-based fiction. But the scary unknowns and things that happen in real life keep it alive. When a machine like the subterrane exists, when mutilated cattle are found, when dozens of residents report seeing the same strange lights, it's easy to see why the myth doesn't fade. Dulce, with 2,700 residents, seems more like a village than a town. Some locals dislike UFO reports because they attract gawkers and conspiracy theorists. For others, the stories are part of their identity. They share them openly, convinced that something truly strange lives under Acaleda Mesa. Everyone agrees Dulce is unique. The night sky full of mysterious lights. And that's about it. The last is a little debunky, so we're just going to skip that. Because this channel is for believers. So at 39 minutes, we're going to say 40 minutes past the hour. Is a story from journalnews.com. Perhaps a Rhino Rex submission, perhaps. With no author credited, it just says, written by Peoples Tonight. Tina T says, that's right, Bill. We want to believe. Tina's smart. It's entitled Illinois' Glimmer Man Entity. Encounters Recalled. And it's at journalnews.com. And People's Tonight begins. In a very small font. An Illinois woman recalls her early and later encounters with the Glimmerman entity. Her description was parallel to the predator alien in the film series. And the mostly uncredited author says, I recently came across the following account. This is 100% true and hard for me to share because anytime I try to tell someone else, I get laughed at, accused of lying. I recently saw an article about a woman who was hunting and saw an invisible or cloaked creature that she described as almost like a predator from the movie of the same name. In other words, like the movie Predator. Like the movies. Predator. Or like the movies, Predator. I read her story and saw the pictures she took of said predator. I'm not dismissing her story, actually the opposite, since I too have encountered something similar. And that's what prompted me to seek out if anyone else has encountered a predator in the woods. When I was about 5 years old, I was playing by the edge of the wood behind my grandmother's house. I played there often, and my grandmother just kept an eye on me from the kitchen or living room. They just said, get out of the house. Come back later. And I guess if they wanted to be amused, they might look out and try to see what we were doing. I don't know, maybe they did. Maybe they monitored us. Didn't seem like that. It was nice. My parents let me walk to the library alone. When I was very young, I mean, I was scared. It was a long way. It's like, it was a city of Glens Falls, which is kind of it's not a huge city, but there are 20, 30,000 people maybe. And the library is like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe a dozen blocks away, a dozen small city blocks away. And I was scared, but I was really young. And I made it to the library and took out a book. I think I might have got my library card that day too. Maybe not, but that's the first time I took a book out of the library. I walked there myself. And the author continues, anyway, that day, I picked out a spot to dig. I'd been out there for quite a while because I remember I had a pretty decent-sized hole going, when something caught my eye up in a tree that I was next to. I almost didn't know how to explain it, but it looked like almost a heat wave coming off of the branch of the tree. It was fall, I remember this, because I had on my pink jacket. And I remember thinking my mother was going to be ticked off because I had dirt around the bottom of the arms from digging. I also remember there being lots of leaves on the ground. I'm staring at this heat wave. Yeah, that is what the predator in the movies looks like. It's heat wave only when it's using its cloaking device. It appears only as the heat wave. And I realized it was a human shape. So here I am, 5 years old, and wondering why there's an invisible man in a tree. I was scared and I didn't know what to do. Gotcha Man says infrared. No, he sees an infrared, Gotcha Man. What he looks like is a little different when he's using his cloaking device. It started moving and making a faint clicking sound. Shades of predator indeed. It's about that time I decided I wasn't supposed to be seeing this, and I raced back to the house. My grandmother saw I was shaken, and I remember telling her I saw an angel. In my 5-year-old mind, welcome Ryu 72. I didn't know what else it could be. I had never heard of aliens or ghosts or monsters. At 5, you hadn't heard of monsters? I don't know about that. You must have been extremely sheltered. If you hadn't heard of monsters by age 5, or ghosts even, perhaps aliens. So to me, it had to be an angel, because that's all my little mind could think of. Maybe she was a Mennonite. No insult intended to the Mennonite in attendance. Fast forward to when I'm 12 years old. By this time, I never thought of that encounter. I loved watching action and science fiction movies, and my daddy rented Predator. I'm watching it with him. And the first time you see the predator cloaked, I about pooped my pants. All the memories from that day digging in the dirt flooded back. I asked my dad if Predator was real, or if he knew anyone that had a cloaking ability. He told me it was all fake. It wasn't like it is today where I could just Google it. I had no access to the internet. Again, maybe he was Mennonite. Again, no insult intended to the Mennonite in attendance. I had no access to the internet. So again, I just put it out of my mind. When did Predator come out? I don't have an IMDb up here. I should, man. IMDb, please. Yeah, let's go there. Predator. Boy, this is tiny. That's a little better. Predator. Predator. The original, right? With the breeder. No. Ugh. Copy, paste. I keep Predator Badlands. Predator 87. Yeah, that would be before the internet, long before the internet, so I take that back. Tina T confirms. Thank you, Tina. Again, fast forward to the year 2004. I have 3 children. I just went through separation from my husband. I moved to the next town in an apartment with my kids. These apartments were all one-level duplexes, with there being about 5 buildings. I'm at the very last apartment of the last building. The apartments are considered in town, but are really on the outskirts. There's a deep ditch that runs behind the buildings, with a chain link fence that separates the backyard from the ditch. There are about 6 or 7 trees on our side of the fence. If you follow the ditch, you hit a small forest, eventually leading to the country with a larger forest, farmland. I lost my place. I smoke, but I wouldn't smoke in the apartment because of the kids, so I went out to the back porch often. One night, I was up late doing laundry, and after the kids went to bed, I decided to take a smoke break before I went to sleep. I'm back there on the porch, and I started hearing this faint clicking sound. I looked to the ditch because I'd seen a groundhog out there a few days before. Maybe he was out there again. The yard is lit only barely from the outside light that's by the playground to the right of my back porch. I didn't turn on my porch light. I don't do that normally. I was just going out for a quick smoke. I didn't see any groundhog. I didn't see any movement in the ditch. The faint clicking sound kept happening, and a slight shift of movement made me look up into the tree to the left of my porch. It was there. The same thing I saw when I was 5. It was like a distortion, and in humanoid shape. It seemed to be crouching, an arm holding on the trunk of the tree. I couldn't believe it. I was like, is this happening? All I could think about was my kids. I ran in, slamming and locking the door. I ran to the kids' room and made sure all the windows were locked. Then I turned off the lights in the living room and stared out the blinds at the tree. I sat there for a good 10 minutes, but I didn't see anything more. I began to think I was just tired and my mind was playing tricks on me. After you see someone holding onto the trunk of the tree? Just as I was finally talking myself down, Eldergrown says, next comes the 3 red dots. A reference, of course, to the Predator's laser sight. It's not a single dot. It's 3 red dots. Oh, is that the right one? Yeah, it's the right one. 3 red dots. I didn't want to do a reverse one of these. 3 red dots, which is that's the sight, the laser sight the Predator uses. Then my neighbor's dog came running across the yard, started barking at the same tree. That pretty much freaked me out because I'd never seen that dog bark before. I never heard him bark at anything, even at the groundhog. The barking went on. I heard the neighbor lady who owns the dog call him back inside. While he was going back inside, he even turned back to look at the tree. I didn't sleep that night, and since I've never seen anything like that again. I don't know what to think. I'm a grown woman. I have kids. I have a good job. Has anyone else had an experience like this? Good story. Thank you. I think that was Rhino Rex. Thank you, Rhino Rex. That's the Predator. And at 54 minutes past the hour, let's do green tea's suggestion, which is, try again, it's not doing my paste. The Kelly Hopkinsville, Kentucky Goblin Encounter. Here, I'm sure we'll find an interesting story. Space Goblins, says Elder, indeed. The Courier Journal, 70 years ago. Must be from near Kelly. 70 years later from WBKO. Probably very short there if it's a radio station article. Paranormal Catalog. Goblins in Kentucky. Let's try Paranormal Catalog. Catalog has a sort of short sound to it, but you never know. I like it. Yeah, I like it. Here at paranormalcatalog.net is an so far uncredited story entitled Goblins in Kentucky, the Kelly Hopkinsville Encounter. This is evidently the story that inspired the creation of the term Little Green Men. Although, paradoxically, the little aliens, or the short aliens in the story, were not green, but I think gray, silvery gray, I believe, if my memory serves. But it was with this story, they started calling them Little Green Men. The actual aliens from this story. Let's find out what, is there an author? I didn't even look. I went down to the bottom, but didn't look. No, nothing. This is Paranormal Catalog. Okay, an anonymous begins. Oh, this, by the way, is a picture of one of them. Let's take a look at that first. It won't let us. It's protected. Ugh. I hate when that happens. View page source. Save as. Open in reading mode. Back forward. Okay. Well, we could do it by hand here. Yeah, there we go. It's a little fuzzy, but that as big as it gets. Down here? We going down here? Oh, we better go lower. How about now? A little lower. Okay, accept, please. There we go. Height, 2.5 to 3.5 feet. Bald head, same color as the body. Chin almost a point. Well, tell us the color of the body. Sex, no indication. Miniature feelers or antenna on each side of the top of the head. Dark depressions in each ear. They don't really show those. Nose, like a cone-like nose, tapering to a point with a bulb on the end. Body powerfully built to the waist. Legs slim and stick-like. Ears large, floppy, extended considerably above the crown of the head, pointed at the top, like wrinkled leather. That's pretty specific. Extended out from the side of the head somewhat. So, elephant ear, like, right? Upper lip tucked under the lower lip. Shoulders sloped sharply. No neck apparent. Arms long, almost touching the ground. Hands wide, fingers with talons. Feet circular, almost like suction cups. Very interesting. Let's get down to reading level. Welcome, Candy Wolf. And Anonymous begins. The Kelly Hopkinsville encounter was a close encounter with extraterrestrial beings in 1955, near the communities of Kelly and Hopkinsville in Kentucky. Ufologists regard it as one of the most significant and well-documented cases in the history of UFO incidents. On August the 21st, while visiting his friend Elmer Lucky Sutton at a farmhouse in the small town of Kelly, Billy Ray Taylor from Pennsylvania went outside to get water from the well. Suddenly he noticed something flying across the sky. It was very bright and had a colorful exhaust. He panicked and ran back inside and told everyone else, including his wife and the Sutton family, that he had just seen a UFO. Taylor also said he didn't hear any loud noise like an explosion, but there was a hissing sound when the object landed somewhere near the back of the farmhouse. There's a lot of movies that are based on this. However, nobody took Taylor's claim seriously until they heard the dogs barking. Someone or something was approaching the house. The intruders had large round heads and long arms with claws, the arms almost reaching the ground. Every aspect of their appearance appeared to shimmer and emit a glow in the darkness. Their eyes emitted a yellowish light, and their bodies glistened as if they were composed of silver metal. So they might have been robotic. The group gathered at the Sutton farmhouse were determined not to surrender without a struggle. These people are armed. Sutton and Taylor quickly armed themselves with weapons. One of the creatures approached the window and pressed its face against it, and they immediately began shooting. Later that evening, a group of 5 adults and 7 children rushed to the Hopkinsville police station in a state of fear and desperation. One of them managed to utter, "We need help. We've been fighting them for almost 4 hours." The group said they had been fending off the otherworldly invaders for nearly 4 hours with gunfire. Sutton and Taylor recounted shooting at around 12 to 15 short, dark figures. They kept appearing at the door and peering through windows. That sounds so bloody frightening. UFologist Jerome Clark describes the creatures as floating through trees and the sound of bullets hitting them, resembling bullets hitting a metal bucket. He also mentions an unusual glowing patch and a mysterious green light. Thinking they were dealing with a gunfight between locals, authorities responded swiftly to the scene. 4 city police officers. Rhino Rex says, "This is the most believable story of backwoods boy meeting aliens I've ever heard." 5 state troopers, 3 deputy sheriffs, and 4 military police officers from the nearby U.S. Army Fort Campbell rushed to the Sutton farmhouse in Christian County in the town of Kelly. During an extensive search, they found no trace of the alleged ETs, except for bullet holes in the window and door screens caused by the residents' gunfire. The farmhouse was occupied by Glennie Langford, her children Lonnie, Charlton, and Mary, as well as Elmer Lucky Sutton, John Charlie J.C. Sutton, and their wives Vera and Arlene. Arlene's brother O.P. Baker, and Billy Ray Taylor with his wife June. Reportedly, the Taylors, Lucky, and Vera were transient carnival workers who happened to be visiting the farmhouse. The following day, neighbors informed the officers that the families had hastily departed, after claiming that the creatures had returned about 3:30 in the morning. That sounds so frightening. Psychologist Rodney Schmeltz and Scott Lillenfield used the incident as a debunking example to teach critical thinking. They suggest alcohol may have influenced the sighting, but actually, that was a dry house. There was no drinking permitted in the house by the owner and/or owners. I think it was the matriarch who had that rule. Skeptic Joe Nickel proposes that the family mistook nocturnal owls for aliens, noting their aggressive behavior and resemblance to the reported creatures. Author Brian Dunning highlights the similarities between the owl's height and the reported size of the being. According to French ufologist Renaud Leclerc, the simplest explanation for the case is that the residents mistook great horned owls for the creature. Do great horned owls have does it sound, when you hit great horned owls, does it sound like your bullets are hitting metal buckets? I don't think so. And they took down scores of them, or actually, I think they fired point blank. I think the metal was highly protective because I think one of them fired point blank at one of them, and it was knocked down, but it got right back up. Investigations by police, blah, 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 found no evidence of a hoax. as well as investigations by the Air Force and civilian ufologists. Some ufologists compared the creatures to gremlins, leading to their popular nickname, the Hopkinsville Goblins. Ufologist Ellen Hendry noted the case's significance due to its duration and the number of witnesses involved, while Project Blue Book labeled it otherwise, without further comment. The encounter with the goblins in Kelly, Hopkinsville led to the popularization of the term Little Green Men. Before this sighting, beings in flying saucers were simply referred to as little men, while Little Green Men was mainly used in science fiction stories. Really? I wonder if that's true. After the alleged sighting, local reporters began describing the creatures as Little Green Men, and the phrase quickly spread through newspapers, radio, and translations into other languages. Kleine grüne Männer. Or Kleine grüne Männer. Something like that. Little green men in German, I hope. Let's find out about that term. I thought that, did not know it was in science fiction. Let's see if we can query AI to find out what the source of that term is. Copying term. Clicking on AI tab. Enabling voice recognition. Voice recognition enabled. Test. What is the origin of the term? And we'll paste it in here. Little Green Men. Folklore origins. Green Children of Woolpit. I don't think Little Green Men comes from Green Children of Woolpit. Green men also appeared in medieval carvings and mythology as nature spirits. That's green men, not little green men. Oh, here we go. Science fiction and pulp magazines. In the early 20th century, Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote of green Martians, though they were giant rather than little. By the 30s and 40s, cheap pulp covers often depicted aliens in bright greens and reds because those inks reproduced vividly. Those were the inks they used, that's right, for the color covers. That explains it. And it wasn't because it caught the eye on vivid because it caught the eye on newsstands, but AI should also have explained it was because that was the inks they used. The phrase Little Green Men became widely known after the 1955 Kelly Hopkinsville encounter in Kentucky. Witnesses described small beings with glowing eyes and metallic skin. From then on, the term stuck. Thank you, AI. All right, let's move on. That was the, let's move on to, I think this is from Verpine, a suggestion. No, this suggestion is from Verpine, I believe. Green Tea suggests maybe they were droids. Maybe they were droids. Candy Wolf says he resembles Dobby. So at 11 minutes past the hour, Elder says, well, they weren't the droids they were looking for. What is this topic? I must see. The alien encounter at Varese. Let's say Varese, Italy. That's a little large. Let's tone it down a bit. Sometimes when you magnify one page, it applies to all of them. Yeah. Here at ThinkAboutItDocs.com, there's a story entitled 1950, Alien Encounter at Varese, Italy. Let's see if we have an author here. Evidently not. What about at the bottom? What's a good one? Good long one. Yeah, very long. Additional resources. No author credited. What a shame. Someone did a lot of work here. And the author begins. On the 24th day of April 1950, 42-year-old factory worker Bruno Ficini was working the late shift and stepped outside to get some fresh air on his break. His home city of Varese had just had a severe thunderstorm. The last distant streaks of lightning were still visible as Bruno decided to see if the electrical system had popped a circuit breaker. He was taken completely aback at what he saw not far from the factory doors. Investigating a bright glowing light, which he thought was part of a factory transformer problem, he was shocked to see a circular-shaped glowing object with a ladder descending from its lower portion. At the top of the UFO was a greenish glow, partially obscuring a light-skinned being. Oh, great, more white men, right? The unusual being appeared to be welding something on the craft. Bruno's first impression of the craft was that it was a type of experimental craft from a nearby airbase. His impression was then altered by the sight of several other small alien creatures, which emerged from the craft. In a moment or two, the latter began to be drawn up into the mysterious craft, and the beings began to re-enter the craft through an invisible door of some kind. The full realization of what he witnessed sent Bruno into a full run away from the encounter. As he fled, he heard a sound like that of a large beehive. One of the remaining creatures pointed a type of weapon at him, and a beam of force knocked him to the ground. Although in pain, he was able to watch the last activities of the aliens as they prepared the craft to take off. The beehive sound increased as the object made its way into the skies and vanished from view. The next day, Bruno made a full report of his encounter to the police force. I can imagine why he didn't go that night. Lost my place. Where's police force? There were signs still visible of the activities of the night before. Police found burned patches on the ground and indentation marks of an extremely heavy object. Also found were some odd green pieces of a metal-like substance. So this sounds like this really happened. I've been thinking that in most of the reliable UFO reports, usually the aliens are kind of under our height. I would think of the majority. And I think probably the reason for that is because, and more of these are being discovered with the new telescopes. More and more Earth-like planets are being discovered. But so far, because of probably our telescopes aren't that good, so far, they've all been bigger than Earth. None are smaller. With our lower gravity, we were able to grow taller than aliens do. And probably the shorter an alien gets, the better able he is to exist on worlds of higher gravity, on a home world of higher gravity. I don't know if I'm expressing myself exactly the way I want to. What I mean is, if you have, the smaller the alien is, the more likely his stature is to, will be able to resist more and greater and greater amounts of gravitational pull. If that explains it, I don't know. Aldebaran also reminds us heavy gravity worlders would be extra strong on Earth. The fragments were analyzed. What fragments? Also found were some odd green pieces of a metal-like substance. Bruno recounted the welding operation and suggested that the green pieces of debris were refuse of the welding. The fragments were analyzed. Results of this test concluded that the fragments were an anti-friction material containing several types of metal along with a lubricant. In September 1953, UFO investigators had their own tests conducted on the green substance. A scientific institute specializing in metallurgy assessed that the fragments were 74% copper, 19% tin, and other trace elements. So we're copper and tin, we're talking brass or bronze here, right? Let's ask ChatGPT. Turn on Dragon. What do you call the kind of metal that results from %70 copper and 15% tin and trace elements? Bronze. Bronze contains between 88 and 90% copper and 10 to 12% tin. Also, Eldergrown knew that. T. Plateau knew that. The substance under heavy magnification was yellow-white in color, but did not contain any metals which could be found on Earth. I guess they mean the lubricant. These conclusions did not entirely rule out the possibility of an ET connection in the case of Bruno. Pacini was taken very seriously by all who knew him. He was respectable, well-liked, and considered reliable, trustworthy. He gained nothing from his tale of the strange object and occupants. Then we have Abbiati Guizzoni. I don't know how to pronounce that. Let's skip to one I know how to pronounce. Actually, this looks like a good one. And it's this, yeah. The rest of it's about Abbiati. A lot of it. Yeah, I mean, that was only a warm-up, this guy. Huh. Why did they change? Because single encounter, 1950 encounter. It was April 24th, 1950, the one we were just talking about. Oh, there's two. Okay. From Abbiati, from April 24th, and Bruno's was from April 24th as well. Okay, that's the reason. This has a lot more detail, Abbiati's does. Bruno Facchini heard and saw sparks coming from a dark-hovering object, near which a man dressed in tight-fitting clothes and wearing a helmet seemed to be making repairs. 3 other men were seen near the craft. When the work was finished, a trap through which light had been shining was closed, and the thing took off. The witness had time to note many details of the machine and its occupants. The province of Varese already had its share of UFO sightings. Yet this case is in fact one of the most well-known early close encounters of the third kind in Italy. Here is the full and correct story. Why don't you just tell us the full and correct story? Why do they have Abbiati's name? Jacques Vallée's Magonia database, a listing of UFO landings, has the following entry. About Bruno. Abbiati Gazzoni, Italy. Maybe that's the author of that section. Yeah, that's probably why. History of Bruno. He told Antonio Giudici. Oh, sorry, Giudici. He thought a power cable may have fallen to the ground. Now I'm reading above now. Was afraid that his kid might get hurt if he grabbed it. That wasn't at. That was at work. I thought it was at work he had this incident. The rain had just stopped. He went outside his home. Oh, I just read a bunch of crap? Why didn't you tell that to us in the beginning? It says full report. Great. Just great. Well, what's the real story? At 10 p.m. here it says. What time does it say up here? It just says the 24th. Working late shift. And yet here, it says at 10 p.m. the rain had just stopped after a violent thunderstorm, and he went outside his home to go to the outhouse. And he was about to return home after smoking a cigarette. He saw several strange flashing lights, which at the time he thought was being generated by a storm in a field adjacent to his home. He decided to investigate anyway, because the lights were in the direction of a power line pole. The high-voltage power line goes right over the village, and another of its poles is right in front of his home. He was afraid for his kids, it says. He went out, he saw nothing, and was about to return home when he saw the lights again and again went in their direction. He told Antonio Giudici. It was a little farther than I went before. I decided to go all the way. There I saw a huge dark shape, like a ball with a flat top. Interesting shape. He saw the dark object some 200 yards away, next to the power line pole. He estimated it to be 10 meters large and 7 meters high. He said in the middle of it was a small ladder, lit by a green light. Almost immediately, says his quote, I understood that the light came from some sort of lamp, handled by a standing man who seemed to be engaged in welding. He wore something like a diving suit and a mask. Later he summarized for the press. Next to a power line pole, I saw a huge round shape. From the illuminated disc, a ladder came down. A door opened. I could see inside the UFO because a light diffused inside. There was another ladder leading to a higher level of the craft. On the walls, there were bottles connected together in rows between them. I could notice that there were gauges and tubes. Wow. I would be most interested in asking him how much space there was between the rungs of the ladder. Driven by curiosity, I went closer and saw two other people with the same clothing moving slowly around the craft. I guessed their diving suit was heavy and slowed down their movements. The craft, lit by the welding tool, cast metallic reflections back at me. The sparks Ficini had seen were pouring out of pipes. Which one of the figures was working on was some type of device. The inside of the craft could be partially seen through an open vent. Inside were lots of dials and cylinders. The air around the craft was unusually warm, and a buzzing sound like a giant beehive was heard constantly. All the figures were dressed in grayish, one-piece, tight-fitting clothes. Oh, that's what he means by a diving suit. I pictured something bulky. I pictured pre-scuba divers. Do you know who invented scuba gear? Who invented scuba gear? Anybody know? Jacques Cousteau invented scuba. No kidding. Look it up. T. Plateau is correct. Elder wants to know if it was a steam-powered UFO. Rupine knew as well. They were also wearing helmets, but their faces were concealed. Elder says you were thinking of hard helmet diving suits. Yes, exactly, Elder. Let me show you what I was thinking of. And spacesuits, probably, but mostly when they said diving suit. Where's that? It's going to be here. Hard helmet diving suit. Well, there's some Neo hard helmets. So those are pretty cool. Oh, for tourists and stuff. Yeah, that looks nice. I was thinking of this. Rhino Rex said, wait, did you say steam-powered UFO? Yeah, that's a joke that Elder made, Rhino. I'd love to do this on in the Caribbean. You just put on the top part. That's pretty cool. Okay, where are we going? We're back here. Okay, the inside of the craft could be partially seen through an open vent. At that time, he thought the aircraft was in trouble because of the storm, and the people were trying to do some repair. Or maybe it was American pilots repairing some new kind of aircraft that failed. because he said they were the same size as human beings, about 1.70 meters. After watching for a while, he approached within 4 to 5 meters of the craft and offered to help. He then started to realize they might not be American pilots. As the beings started to converse with each other and call him in a guttural language, and also because they moved with difficulty and made strange gestures at him, which he felt may be an offer to come aboard. The invitation and the realization that they were not human made him panic. He told Antonio Giudici, "I offered to help, but the only answer I received were some guttural sounds I didn't understand. I wondered what their intentions were. I had the feeling they were inviting me aboard. Suddenly I heard an uproar, like the amplified buzz of a bee, or a huge power generator. I saw another ladder in the interior of the craft, and all around tubes, cylinders, gauges. I understood this was not a plane. And then I was seized by panic, and I ran away. I was not so close anymore when I turned my head back. I saw one of the men raise some sort of apparatus he carried at his side and beam a ray of light in my direction. I started to run again. But as soon as I did, I felt as if I was cut in 2 parts by some cutting tool, or by a jet of compressed air, and I fell flat. After a while, I saw 4 beings. After a while. I guess this is after he got back up. After a while, I saw 4 beings around the disc. 2 were beside the ladder. A third one seemed to attempt to weld together a group of tubes. This operation was the one that produced the strange flashing that had attracted my attention. Wait, this is a backflash. Thinking this was some test of a secret prototype, I approached them asking if they need for help. Boy, this webpage is really set up well. Really, kudos, guys. Kudos to the author. Elder Groan says a spacesuit could be confused for this, and he has given a link. Thank you, Elder. Thanks, buddy. Thank goodness there's no sound on that channel. He felt pushed to the ground for several yards. He felt pushed to the ground for several yards and knocked down. Maybe this is translated from the Italian. Later he said it was like feeling a strong discharge and a burning sensation on the skin of his abdomen. How could it be on his abdomen if he was running away? Maybe they got him on the side. Maybe it grazed him. He stayed on the ground but looked at what was going on. Shortly afterwards, when the repairs had apparently been completed, the American pilots then returned to their craft. The trap through which the light had been shining was closed, and the craft took off sideways, making a heavy buzzing sound. He told Antonio Giudici. Tina says, "Help! I've fallen and I can't get up." Thank you, Tina T. They seemed not to be interested in me anymore. I am convinced they only wanted to scare me and had no intention to do anything wrong to me. as you're suffering from third-degree burns? They were busy removing the scaffold and withdrawing the ladder. Then the door closed. All the lights went out, and the buzzing sound continued. Suddenly the sound became louder. The craft took off, gained speed, and disappeared. This to me sounds like a 100% true story. Not the first one. Again, here we have a flashback. Again, I mean, it's not in order. I was hit at the back by a light beam. It had such force that I felt pushed. I lost my equilibrium and I hit the ground, knocking my head against a stone. I stayed on the ground without moving. In the meantime, those beings were finishing their welding job. Then they all entered the disc, it closed and went away. He stayed on the ground for a while, looking at the sky. Everything was silent again. Finally, he went back home, and unsurprisingly, he could not sleep that night. The following day, Ficini returned to the site because he lost his cigarette box there when he fell. He noticed there were some traces and 4 circular depressions of 1 meter diameter each, arranged in a square pattern of 6 meters side length. The grass around it was burnt, and lots of pieces of melted metal were on the ground, the results of the welding, evidently. I'm kind of suspicious of this first-time chat. We have a first-time chat here. It's in a different language. We're going to translate it. And I think this is Google Translate. And I'm getting real quick on the trigger here to click away from Google Translate. Let me get there again. Detect. No, we don't want to see that. You were burned by this before. I know. Elder says you were burned by this before. Let me get block this guy forever and a day. And block. Ban, I call it here. Banned, good. And X out. Here at the left, Bruno Ficini showing one of the fragments he picked up on the site the next day. Ficini then went to the police headquarters of Varese. An investigation was carried out by, it says here, unmotivated policemen. What other kind do they have? I should not insult our kind friends from Italy. What other kind is there? I'm sorry, I'm having too much fun. The police went on location and saw the ground traces. And Ficini or the police handled the debris, which was sent to the Research Institute for Studies of Metals in Novara. Rhino Rex appropriately comments, I personally get concerned about overly motivated policemen. Yeah, that's a special problem these days. The Institute examined the samples and merely said they were heat-resistant, anti-friction metal, and commented they would be ideal in spaceflight to face the burn-up as the craft entered the Earth's atmosphere, although it was not clear who made that comment. Several days after the encounter, Ficini estimated he was hurt enough to justify a visit to an MD. Rupine had an Italian teacher in college, he writes in chat. And she was amazed when you went to the post office in the U.S. you got helped the same day. You know what? I heard that in Italy, they shortly after the U.S. introduced income tax, Italy tried to introduce income tax as well. It did not go over, and evidently they have no income tax to this day. Okay, it is 42 minutes past the hour, and we are moving on to the final suggestion of the evening from Verpine. And that is at 43 minutes past the hour, as I said. I say 42, probably. And that is... No, this actually from... previous one was from Verpine, I believe. This one's from Elder. I remember complimenting him on his taste. This is at highercalling.net. And it's written by Chester Moore. It's called My Uncle and the Rock Apes of Vietnam. And the author begins. When I was young, my Uncle Jackie Moore used to tell us stories about his time in the Vietnam War. And one story in particular has stuck with me. He would never tell us detailed battle stories or anything involving unaliving. In fact, he would often say, if someone starts talking about all their confirmed kills, rest assured they were a cook. The real guys don't talk about it. He would, however, talk about his friends and the things he saw there. He said the scariest thing that ever happened to him wasn't being shot at or navigating dense jungle. It was being set up on an ambush and feeling something hit him in the back. When he turned around, expecting to see an enemy shoulder, he was shocked to see what he described as a rock ape throwing stones at him. As a child, I imagined these were some kind of apes native to the Vietnamese jungles, but as I grew older, I learned that Vietnam has no native great apes. I didn't know that. I've heard of the rock ape, too. Never knew that. What my uncle described was essentially a cryptid, a creature not proven by science. Sightings of these so-called rock apes were so common among soldiers that one of his friends in the troop earned the nickname Rock Ape because of his muscular build. He never spoke of it like a Sasquatch or anything, but it was just a normal animal they saw quite a bit in country. It was described as the size of an extra-large chimpanzee. The dense jungles of Vietnam, filled with the unknown flora and fauna, have been the backdrop for many stories, especially during the time of the war. Among the most intriguing tales are those recounted by Vietnam vets about their encounters with the rock apes, creatures said to inhabit these enigmatic landscapes. Locally, they are known as Noi Rung. They've been a part of Vietnamese folklore for generations. Described as small, bipedal creatures covered in hair. These beings are said to be more than just figments of imagination. The stories from soldiers who served in Vietnam add a compelling layer to the legend. Many veterans who returned from the war brought back tales that go beyond the typical war stories. Among these are numerous accounts of the rock apes. They often involve sightings of the creatures observing them from a distance, the noise they made in the night, and even full-on confrontations. Some veterans recall moments when they spotted figures moving swiftly through the trees. At first, these were dismissed as enemy soldiers, but their agility and unfamiliar sounds made them think otherwise. These encounters were often brief and left soldiers puzzled and sometimes frightened. There are more intense stories where soldiers describe being attacked by the rock apes. These confrontations usually occurred at night, with the creatures reportedly throwing rocks or screaming from the darkness, causing confusion, causing fear among the troops. While these accounts are fascinating, they are often met with skepticism. Some suggest that the stress and strains of war might have led to hallucination or misidentifications of known wildlife, like monkeys. Yet the consistency in the descriptions of the rock apes by different individuals adds another layer to the claims. Okay, the more of it's just stroking and yeah, just a bunch of stroking for the end of the article. We're going to be out soon, but first, I would like to see depictions of rock apes. Rock apes. Here's an artist depiction. Open image, please. Holy cow, I mean, looks like he just got off this UFO. Boy, they got him with some fangs here. I didn't read anything about fangs in that story. And this guy, since he's depicted from evidently the level of his knees, looks like a large primate rather than a smaller one. So, what if they have anything from drawn by an actual Vietnam vet? AI right here. No, I'm not seeing much except AI. Well, here's something. Image. U.S. serviceman, it says. Saw this creature. Here we go. Kind of looks like Sasquatch, though. Anecdotal accounts from U.S. servicemen lend credence to the idea that the jungles of Southeast Asia may be home to an undocumented bipedal great ape with a penchant for throwing rocks. Okay, we're going to call it. Tina, thanks so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it, ma'am. Remember my show coming up on Wednesday? Where's the magic picture? Here it is. Banned by YouTube. You can't find them here on YouTube, but you can see them on Wednesday. Until then, may God bless and protect you all.